usual brain work doesn't do anything.
Yeah,
And
unfortunately,
so,
right?
we can't hear her. Could you repeat the question? We can't hear her.
Oh, sorry. She was just wondering what would be the best way to determine whether or not a person's had a concussion if they've gone into the ER and they, I'm kind of paraphrasing, they check out okay, what's the next step? Because chances are they've had a head injury. Just because they're not showing, the big bad ugly stuff doesn't mean that there isn't something that's happened that should be, evaluated. But around here, I'm the only person that has this right eyes equipment in the state. It's just basic, and it just actually last week got FDA approval for a Class 2 medical device. Basically meaning anything we check with this is right on. I mean, it's FDA approved, or the quality of these, all the stuff that we can do that make it be accurate, it's there.
Do surgeries on your eyes affect this?
No, what we do is, can you have surgeries on your eyes? That was the question.
Does it affect the diagnosis?
If you've had surgery on your eyes, as long as we can get a clear picture of the retina of your eyes, we can do the exam.
So if you had cataracts, maybe no.
If you've had cataracts and had them removed, you're fine.
But no, if you currently have.
If you currently have them, then when we do the evaluation, we can look to see, can it still track where because it'll take a picture of your eye. Even though the cataracts are there, it still takes a picture. So as you're moving, it'll just follow the picture that it's taken of what it's able to see.
How young can you perform that?
Depends how well they can sit and follow a dot on the screen. And that's variable. Some kids do really good with that, some kids don't. But essentially it's follow a circle, follow a dot, go back and forth. If something pops up on the screen, can you hit the right button and respond to it? It takes literally like 8 to 10 minutes at most.
What about glaucoma?
If you have glaucoma, I'll have to check on that this year. I'm guessing you probably still could get a good picture of it. But as you're doing the exam, if we can't get the camera to get a good photo, then we know. Then we would know. Because it calibrates. So when you sit there, basically what it is, it's a touchscreen computer that sits upright on a table, and the camera's down at the bottom. So when you look at the screen, the camera's shooting at your eyes. And as long as you can get a good infrared vision or a picture of your eyes, wherever your eyes go, the camera follows.
Okay, so the whole carb thing and the brain injury has me thinking, so if somebody has a brain injury that does not get diagnosed and doesn't ever heal, does that mean that their carb metabolism is going to be affected? Does this affect blood sugar issues? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it can affect all those things, you bet. Yeah, because once that blood-brain barrier is broken down, your chronic inflammatory response in your brain is revved up all the time. And so now any type of food that you get into your system that's not being properly broken down can keep initially firing off that response. And so now, once again, as your brain is starting to shift into that higher anxiety mode, because it's trying to protect itself, it starts shifting the rest of your body into a higher state of anxiety. And so when your body is in a fight or flight mode, all of the rest and repair jobs and procedures that your body would do starts to suffer from that. So basic metabolism, your digestive system, your ability to eliminate toxins, I mean anything from basically from here down can be affected, because now you're having that system lean more towards fight or flight versus rest and repair. I mean, our nervous system is designed where during the day we're supposed to be about 80% in rest and repair mode and 20% in fight or flight mode. But in our society it's flipped. Because your brain doesn't know the difference between physical, chemical, or emotional stress. It just knows it's being stressed. And so it's going to keep sending out those stress responses over time. That's why one of the biggest challenges people will talk about past 10, 15, 20 years is adrenal fatigue, right? My adrenal glands are shot because I'm stressed out all the time. Like, if your adrenal glands are shot, I tell you what, there's other stuff that's shot. That's just one of the things that you're experiencing. Two symptoms that people come to see me for, pain and fatigue. What causes pain and fatigue? Too much inflammation. Right? The systems of our bodies are overinflamed due to responses to things that our bodies are never designed to respond to over long periods of time. Right? Your brain's not planning 20 years in the future. It's just planning for the next moment. Unfortunately, the next moment is loaded up with all sorts of stuff it was never designed to deal with. I mean, we talked about the excitotoxins. Go back. 50, 60, 70 years ago, you didn't know what artificial flavorings or colorings or preservatives were, right? You just made it out back and brought it in the house and ate it. Right? There was no in-between stuff. It's the in-between where people are getting our challenges because of food density and nutrition and toxicity and chemicals and stress at the work world. I mean, all this stuff is pushing our systems way too hard, and we never get a chance to actually just rest. Just rest and repair. So that's where the people that are getting into more of the types of relaxation types of exercises, so your yoga, your qigong, those types of things where you're actually calming your system down when you're doing those things. That's why people that do those types of exercises tend to see better results from a health standpoint, because they're actually getting their bodies back into the rest and repair mode, as opposed to being all revved up and psyched out about stuff that's usually not even there. I mean, people's brains will get all excited about things that aren't even real. Let's see, I think it's Dr. Daniel Amen talks about all the things that we make up in our minds that aren't even true. Not like using words like always and never. Never use always. Never say never. So when you start using these words or thought processes that are so like there's just an end result to it, right? So there's no getting out of it. There's no way to help yourself get out of these things, because it always happens to me, right? I'm never going to get out of this. Right? All of a sudden, your brain starts filtering its thought process into those types of ideas, which then you get stuck in a rut, and that rut then causes more anxiety and stress. So, and then you throw things like a concussion on top of that. Well, it's no wonder there's things that are going on with people. The number and the degree of neurobehavioral disorders, well, the fact that we have neurobehavioral disorders is a problem in and of itself, but that we have so many and such a wide variety of them, that we have to have so many different labels for them, well, part of me starts thinking, well, where did they all come from, number one? Number two is, how many of those people had head injuries that never got checked or challenged or looked at? I mean, the first documented person that had a personality change due to a head injury is a guy by the name of Phineas Gage. Phineas Gage was around back in the time when they were building the Transcontinental Railroad. He was one of the explosive guys, right? He'd go and put the gunpowder in, tamp it down, and then light the fuse and take off running. One day he's working and he drops the tamping rod and the powder goes off and blows the tamping rod through his head, right through his eye socket and out the back of his head. Still conscious, blew like, I think, 40, 50 feet. He's still conscious. They put him in a wheelbarrow and took him down. It was a mile to the nearest town, or whatever it was. Ended up taking that tamping rod out, and the guy lived. But here's the thing. Before the tamping rod accident, Phineas Gage was the most loved person in that town. He was very friendly, very outgoing, very likable by his comrades at work and the people that were around him. After the accident, he became isolated. He became angry. He became less social. He actually basically died a hermit. What changed? Right? This is one of the first documented cases of a head injury that changed his personality. So when people start talking to me about personality changes when you do, they'll get to ask the question, we're going to do some neurofeedback. So you're going to change the person that I am? I don't know. I guess if you're an angry old cuss and we get you to be a happy-go-lucky guy, well, I guess maybe we did change your personality, but, which one do you want to be? So it's the things of losing access to parts of your brain due to traumas that happened even as you were a kid. I mean, for people getting kicked by horses, falling out of barns, doing all these different things, and from that point on, things were different. Well, yeah, because you injured your brain, and the parts of your brain that were responsible for certain functions, you lost access to them. They're probably still there, but because of the way that the brain in that moment responded to the trauma, it keeps doing it. Because your brain does not have a very good way to assess how it's doing its own job. Right? You can't get up in the morning and look in the mirror and your brain says, well, my frontal lobe was a little bit low today and I need a little bit more cerebellar activation on the right side. You don't get that feedback, right? But that's the type of things like neurofeedback and the QEEG scans do, where it gives your brain something to look at so it can assess what it's doing, how it's changing its own activity. And once it learns how to change its activity and realizes, hey, this is a lot easier, it will do it. Because for as wonderful as your brain is, it's kind of lazy. It likes to do things as easily as it can. Partly reason is it wants to keep resources available so when you hit your head, it can deal with those new injuries and insults with all the resources that are available versus, well, now I have 5 problems I'm trying to deal with, and now you just threw this at me. Right? The burden of stress on the brain again. The less of it that's there, the better it works, the better you work. Any other questions?
You say to get checked out, which would mean going to a ER.
After the initial injury?
Yeah.
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 Oh.
And they aren't familiar with some of this.
Most aren't.
And
Most,
so-
it's the old adage of the East and West Coast get all the cool stuff, and then by the time we get it here, they're learning more cool stuff. They're always behind, but with the advent of the internet and travel being easier it is, we're getting things into the Midwest faster, but still, it's a slower pace than your East and West Coast where you have just bigger towns with bigger populations and more people to talk about it and do it and find out about it.
Can you talk a little bit about treatment?
So when we have somebody that's come in that we know has some sort of issue with concussions, I do 2 things. I do a right eyes evaluation and I do a QEG scan on him. The right eyes evaluation is looking at eye movements like we talked about, and how eye movements can be one of the first indicators whether or not a person has had a concussion. So I like to know from a history standpoint, do they have a concussion? Do they still have a concussion? Are they dealing with it? Are they past the point where now that isn't an issue, but we still want to do a neurofeedback scan on them because even though their eye movements may have repaired and gotten better, the pathways within their brain may have gotten locked and are still there. And so they need to be evaluated and make sure that they haven't gotten stuck in a pattern that's not going to unstick itself, even though we get their eyes working better. This is not working like it should be, and then work on whichever one is the commonality between the 2. So with the right eyes, I can evaluate and see because of which eye movements aren't working, will tell me which part of the brain is not working. So we do the evaluation, we find out that the frontal lobe of the brain isn't working well with the right eyes eval. Then we do a neurofeedback or a QEG scan, or a QEG evaluation, and we find out that, guess what? Their frontal lobe is having brainwave dysregulation issues. Well, guess where I'm going to treat stuff? Right where the X is. And now instead of having to treat multiple areas, I can treat the one that's going to have the biggest impact. And then we throw in a little curveball with my cold laser, and we speed the process up.
So is that where brain core would come in then?
Brain core would be the neurofeedback aspect of it, yes. Yep. And then the right eyes evaluation, once we know which eye movements need to be corrected, fun part about that is we actually have it where we can send you an email that has a link to the exercises so you can do at home.
Oh, okay.
So you can do, and within a very short amount of time, you can correct eye movements. Your eyes have very little muscles that control them. So it doesn't take a lot to rehab little muscles versus, breaking your leg and having to rehab your quadricep takes a little time. Having a little tweak in your eye muscle doesn't take as long. So we do the evaluation, have them do the exercise for 7-10 days, and then come back and check and see how much they've changed. On a scale of 0 to 100, the functional range is 55 to 75 for this individual's age range. He had a 30, so not good. So we had him do the eye exercises. Came back a week later, he had a 36. 36. Had to do it again. When he came back the 3rd time, he scored a 60. So 30, boom. It's like all of a sudden things clicked and it took off. We still are doing neurofeedback with him though, so because his eyes are improving, but we saw this huge imbalance in his brain that's because it's been going on for probably 30 years with this individual. This stuff's just kind of an issue where he's had symptoms, he's gone to everybody, nobody knows what's wrong. So it's kind of a here deal with the thing until we find out that this is. I mean, you could look at his eye movements and a simple circle is not a simple circle for him as far as tracking his eye, when his eyes are moving. When it comes to eyes and eye mechanics, if one of your eyes is off just a little bit, right, your brain does not like that. Because what happens? You're seeing double. or if your eye is tweaked or turned one direction, right? What'll happen is if this eye works fine and this eye has a turn to it, your head will tilt to get this eye to be straight, and then this one adapts. Well, even though this is all straight, you're having all this other mechanical stuff from your neck, your shoulders, all these other things start to manifest into other problems, all because your eyes are replaced. Or if one turns out, you're seeing double. Your brain doesn't like seeing double, right? So what it does is it starts to ignore the vision from one eye. It starts to hallucinate using what's the other eye and what your brain has in memory storage to fill in the gaps. Right? You do this every day, right? Where your optic nerve comes into your eyes, there's no rods or cones there. It's a blind spot. We should be walking around with 2 circles in our visual field, but we don't. Why? Because your brain fills in the gaps for you. So if one eye is even off a little bit, your starts to fill in the gaps. Keeps you functional. Again, your brain's not worried about what's going to happen to you 20 years from now. It wants to make sure you can survive the next 2 seconds without tripping, falling, hurting yourself, and getting eaten by something. And it will keep doing that for you. However, once again, to get into the scenario, my favorite analogy, you're a boat in port. Here's the island you want to get to. You can't see it because it's over the horizon, but you got the coordinates for it, right? So you start sailing. But somehow or another, the coordinates get knocked up by a couple degrees. But you don't know it. But you keep sailing. Until what? You're way off course. And by the time you're out here, you got a lot to correct. But if you fix it down here, you don't have that much that went off course on you. It's letting things go, thinking they're not a big deal. And they are a big deal because they keep continuing to degenerate over time. That was my big tangent answer now. Any other questions?
When you do the right eye exam, how much of a factor is like your stress before you get to the appointment, or when it comes to coffee you've had, or
I'm sure.
your eyes all twitchy?
Yeah. Just came back from the tax, man.
Yeah. We're going both directions.
Well, maybe we'll give you some calming herbs before you go. No, I can't say for sure whether or not what the effect would be, other than you do the evaluation and we have challenges trying to calibrate. It's because your eyes keep twitching. The cameras will pick up on that. So there's a checklist of stuff, so we see if things aren't calibrating, we start looking around. Like are you squinting your eyes, you got them open too much, or you go through that checklist to see whether or not you're meeting or not meeting the criteria for why it's not calibrating like it's supposed to. But yeah, once that thing calibrates on your eyes, as long as you're still zoned in on the screen, that camera's locked into what your eyes are doing.
What experience have you had either with the QEEG mapping or now with the right eyes in working with schools or athletic programs at any level? Have you done that where you've done like baseline screenings, and then have you had anyone that's been concussed come back? And
I've had people that have been concussed and come back and we've gotten their eye movements and things better. As far as at a school level, I haven't had the opportunity to get into a school and just say, hey, well, let's run these kids through a baseline and see where they're at, so you at least have a baseline. So if something does happen, you just come in and get checked. I haven't had that opportunity. What I have had is there is a hockey school training program up in the city. It's a private program up in the city's where they got a contract to train the goalies from the University of Marion. And I had contact with him. We did an evaluation of him with right eyes. He was blown away by it. He had his partner come in and same deal. Said, we're bringing our guys to so we can evaluate their eye movements, because with athletics, we do an evaluation at baseline to make sure your eyes are moving like they should, but there's also that gap of here's where normal is, here's where your elite athletes are. They're just that much better as far as eye movements go, as far as picking up on things and moving things, those types. They want to know where their weaknesses are. And so we do the evaluations in those cases to see how much more past normal can we get them, or if they're already past normal. If 4 of the 6 past normals are good, we want to get the other 2 up to where they could be so that they could be better athletes. So that's kind of where I've gotten into some things from a collegiate standpoint anyways. But no, I think it would be, I encourage everybody, just get come get the test and get baseline done, find out where you're at, because you don't know. I mean, you could have had a head injury years ago and